Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of this. So we have this problem. Brian is saving for a PS5. How much money he has every week can be modeled by the equation below. Y equals 70x plus 40. What does the number 70 represent in the context of this situation? And then what does the number 40 represent in the context of the situation? Before we even dive into this, there's a background question that we really need in order to understand what's happening right here. And so the question is what we just saw in our last video. What does the x and y represent in this equation? Go ahead and pause this and see if you can answer that, because you need to be able to answer that to move on. Great. So our x is going to represent our weeks, and our y is going to represent our money, or dollars. Oops, dollars. Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to come back to that and see where that applies, but we need to know that to really be able to interpret this first setup. So what does the number 70 represent? What does the number 40 represent? For both of these, what we need to think first is, are we talking about a slope, or are we talking about a y-intercept? Well, go ahead and see if you can figure that out. Is this the slope, or is this the y-intercept? Let's start with letter A. Great, so this is our slope. How do we know that? Because it's our m. So 70 is our m, and so we know it's our slope. Okay, now I'm going to kind of go through some things, because you should always be thinking this. Every time we get to this point, you should think, well, what do we know about all of this? Well, we know the slope is our change, right? And more specifically, we know that the slope is our change in y over change in x. Well, let's dive into this a little bit more, and that's what really where this lies in. What does that change in y over change in x really mean? Well, really what this means, first of all, there's a couple things. The first thing is, our y what? Well, our y, we will think about the units. You know, what's our y unit? It's the change in whatever the y unit is over the change in the x units. So units are really important here, if you're really to understand what this means. And then the other really important thing is, there's a word we can use in place of this over. Instead of saying over, we can say per. That's super important. For example, if you went 60 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, right? 60 over 1, 60 miles per 1 hour. Okay, that's like a good example of a slope in the real world. Okay, so let's actually go back and let's use this to apply to this problem here. All right, so this is where this part comes in right up here. The x are the weeks and the y is the dollars. So our slope is 70. We know that m equals 70. But we need to remember that we can always write a slope as a fraction, 70 over 1, right? It's just a number, you put it over 1. Well, that's the same thing. This is our change in y over change in x. Well, change in y what? Well, the y is our dollars, so $70. Oops, dollars, okay. Over, or per, we could think $70 per one what? Well, what's our x unit? Week, per 1 week. So let's go ahead and take this and let's write it as a completed sentence. And that's how we really answer this. So the answer is, the number 70 stands for, or represents, 70 whoops, sorry about that. Represents $70 per 1 week. That's how you want to write that. Okay, go ahead and see if you can do the same idea with the example next before moving on.